Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your time. Alex Holmes, CEO of Plateau Energy Metals. I'm joined today by Raul Ulysses Solis, our General Manager, and Lawrence Stefan, our President and CEO of the PDAC. And I'm here today to talk about our lithium project and how we're enabling the new energy paradigm. As of this morning, we just announced an increase to our resource in lithium to take it to a total of 4.7 million tons of lithium carbonate equivalent. So what does that mean? Well, it puts this project as the 6th largest in the world today for a hard rock lithium project. And in dollar value in the ground, that's about $60 billion of metal in the ground. That's the equivalent of 20 billion pounds of copper. So think of that as we're talking through this project, what it potentially means for putting Peru on the lithium map and changing that lithium triangle to a four-sided shape of some form. The other thing I'd like to touch on before I get into the presentation is electric vehicles, and I'm sure we hear about electric vehicles and what's happening out there. But there's significant changes happening in the landscape of the traditional vehicle market. And the OEMs, the vehicle companies, the Volkswagens and the Audis and the BMWs and the Chevrolets are spending north of $300 billion over the next 10 years to electrify their fleet. And then upstream of them, you have the mega factories that are producing the battery cells that ultimately power these vehicles, and they're spending over $110 billion. And the farther upstream you get, the farther you get to the raw materials, being the mining companies that are providing the metals for these projects. That's significant capital being spent, and it is a revolution. It's the equivalent of going from horse and cart to the Model T Ford, and it's happening. It's moving quickly. So, standard forward-looking statements. Some quick highlights about our project area. We're southeastern Peru in the department of Puno. We're about an hour and a half flight to Juliaca, and about a 3.5-hour drive up a 2-lane paved highway to our project site here. This is 930 square kilometers of mineral concessions. We have Peru's largest hydroelectric power plant, Sangaban, about 40 kilometers away as the crow flies. And then we have access to actually 3 ports in the area when we look to shipping the product out to the end users. We have great infrastructure, and obviously Peru is a very mining-supported nation and a fantastic place to work. We zero in on our projects a little bit further. I'll give you a little bit of background to the company. The company's been around for 10 years and actually working in the Maquisani Plateau area for that period of time. And it was founded originally as a uranium company. And it started off with a reasonable resource base that the team grew over time, and then consolidated land over that period of time to bring together the uranium project. But up until perhaps a year ago, people weren't really thinking about uranium generally out there, even though today we know nuclear energy is one of the cleanest sources, carbon-neutral sources of energy that's stable and predictable. And in 2016, there was a preliminary economic assessment conducted on the project. And this uranium project puts it about number 5 in the world when you look at resources. And it's financeable, and really what it's waiting for is A, the uranium market to come back from a commodity perspective, and B, we're waiting and working with the government on a legal framework for the transport and export of the uranium product from site to port and port to conversion facilities. And that's a very standardized process in any uranium producing nation. And along the way, along that path, in late 2017, we made the big lithium discovery in our Falciani lithium project here. And this is a hard rock project. This is volcanic hosted. And the mineralization is hosted in what's called a tuff. And a tuff is a hardened volcanic ash that millions of years ago settled on historically what was a lake and hardened. And so when you think about the lake and this basin, it effectively sits in a 2-by-3 kilometer basin, and then outside of that, within a 6-by-5 kilometer basin. So the size potential of this project is significant. So it might be unique in the way we've found it and how it's sitting, but it's actually not that unique because the brine projects that we all know in Chile and Argentina and other countries are actually just water that's leached through volcanic rocks and settled themselves and found their ways into the basins. And so we have what effectively is the pre-leached form of these rocks. Very quickly, corporate overview. We trade on the Toronto Stock Exchange, Venture Exchange. under the symbol PLU. And we're widely supported by our shareholders. We have a strong board and a strong management team. And effectively, everyone in Peru is Peruvian, and where we can, we work with Peruvian companies. We're now going to go into our project area, and this is a bit of a virtual tour, if you will. In the yellow outline is the 930 square kilometers, and the white is the highway that runs past our project area and ultimately out to the ports. The Falciani project area, this is where we're going to spend some time now, talking mainly on our lithium project, is outlined in this green area here. And as of this morning, we put out the resource update. And effectively, this is 160 million tons in our, what we call our higher grade zone, our TUF zone, of 3,400 ppm lithium. Now, what does that mean? That translates effectively into $200 per ton rock. And very quickly, from exploration, from discovery hole to first resource was 9 months, and now here we are 6 months later with a resource update again. And it's not just, for us, it's not just about making it bigger, because we know there's more places we can go. This is about creating a flexible, sustainable project that's going to last generations. So to give you some perspective, probably one of the biggest lithium projects in the world today, from a producing standpoint, is about 50,000 tons per year of lithium carbonate equivalent. That means our project is a 100-year mine at that rate. Multi-generational community building, economic building. Metallurgy is a big thing. Obviously, it's great that it's worth $200 per ton in the ground, but how do we actually extract it and create value? And so metallurgy and processing has been going on for about 16 months. And the beautiful thing is, through the thousands of tests we've done, we're not looking at any, special technology or patented processes. This is all standard flow sheet design parameters. So it's a real positive. And the way we look at the project from a development perspective is looking at it's an open pit, low strip ratio, truck and shovel mining with a processing plant. This is an overview of that project area, and I mentioned to you we had this collapsed caldera, this historic lake that hosted the lithium, and we had a 2x3 kilometer caldera and a 6x5 kilometer caldera. But I wanted to give you some perspective on how this sits. In this zone here, this pink sandwiched by the white is the lithium mineralization. And you can see how it's sitting effectively in this lake. Now we're going to look in the deposit area itself. I'll show you some examples of where the resource was prior to our update today. And then we'll look over to the west where the growth has come from. And then we'll look over even farther west to what we're finding here, which is these lithium rocks outcropping at the surface over significant distances. What we're going to look at now is a bird's eye view. We'll be able to look at the resource, how it sits, and what it looks like. So in that shaded blue, you can see through the surface, that is our resource sitting under the surface. And this was done by the Mineral Corporation out of Johannesburg. If we now fly into what we call Falciani East, this is where our first resource came from. And this is looking at an image cut through this part of the hill, looking this way. Okay, and you can see, again, the shape of that belly of the lake forming. And as we were drilling this project off, we looked across the valley, and that's when we found the same rock material outcropping. And we went over, and we continued drilling and expanded the resource. And that's where today's news comes from. So as I mentioned previously, this is our resource sitting under the surface. As you can see, it's amenable to very low strip ratio mining. And like I said, as we were drilling off the east, and if we look through the north here, looking up in this direction here, through this valley, this is where we found outcropping mineralization. We went over with our exploration team, and they continued drilling, and that's where the growth has come from. We'll now look at what we call Falciani West. Again, this was the focus of area of drilling for the last 6 months, and as of today, that drilling was incorporated into a new resource, which unfortunately we don't have in this particular model here, but that effectively comes from this area here. Tres Hermanas, Three Sisters, we call it, because we've got 3 ridges of lithium mineralization outcropping on surface. This image here is taken from an outcrop that's 80 meters high on the edge of this ridge. This is not part of the existing resource, but we mapped it out for 750 meters long. And in all likelihood, once we get it to a PDA, which is the end of the first half of this year, a preliminary economic assessment, as we move to pre-feasibility study, we'll be coming in and drilling in here. Metallurgy and processing. So like I said before, it's great if you have a lot of value in the ground, but can you actually get it out? And so we worked with a local Peruvian metallurgical firm in Lima for the last 16 months. And along that way, we determined that there was multiple process routes that we could see. And so then we take that material and we've taken it to an independent lab, which is based in Australia, that has run a whole lot of a suite of test work on how we can actually extract this mineral. And positives is that whether we apply traditional processing through leaching or temperature water, we can extract the lithium out, and we can produce a very clean or low impurity lithium carbonate product or lithium hydroxide product. And why that's important, and why, even though it's hard rock, it's different than what the Australians are doing, is we're not producing a concentrate. The concentrates only capture part of that value chain. But what we've been able to work on here is a project that can leach and produce the high value product, the $12,000 per ton product. So we're probably about 4 to 6 weeks away from being able to talk to the market about the outcome of some of that work as we narrow in our focus and select what we see as the preferred process route. So this is our roadmap, taking us from, we kicked off our PEA in January, we just put out a resource, metallurgical study work I told you will be coming very shortly, and this will end in a first economic study on the project by the end of June of 2019. This is tremendous progress for a discovery that was November 2017 to be a first economic study and be the 6th largest hard rock lithium asset in the world in 17 months, 18 months. That's a testament to our team and the ability to move things forward. I would like to talk a little bit about our uranium project because it is the genesis of the company and what it was founded on. Like I said, it's a very large resource base. It's over 124 million pounds of uranium. This is completely separate from our lithium project, about 25 or 30 kilometers away. There was a preliminary economic assessment done on this project in 2016, which showed that it had quite robust returns and about a $600 million NPV. And so this is a project that, as the uranium market evolves, as the legal framework comes together in Peru, we can see this moving forward on a separate path, completely separate from the lithium. I'll talk a little bit for a minute about community relations. Certainly they're obviously important to any mineral resource project anywhere in the world. What I really like, because I've only actually been involved with the company since the end of August of last year, is coming into the company and seeing 10 years of history of working with the local communities. We've employed locally where we can. We've conducted various programs like supporting water treatment plants. We do a milk program for the school children, bringing in fresh milk into the area. We're at 4,500 meters of elevation here. We recently, when I was at site in early January, this is a 3.5-year project where we funded but also worked with the local community to help build and design an all-weather football field, soccer turf. And we had the grand opening ceremony. It was about 5 villages that came around, and after we did ribbon cutting and things like this, it then proceeded with a football tournament that lasted all day. So it was really a fantastic testament that it's about being part of the community, recognizing you're a guest, being hosted by Peru and by the communities, and working with them as we evolve our project and look to find the employment. And ultimately, in time, as the project evolves, there will be employment opportunities and training, etc. So that's what I have to say about lithium. A little bit on uranium, but we're very excited about the progress and where we're taking this. And we think this is very significant for, from Peru's perspective as a country, because of what this means. And as a bit of a wrap-up, also to put in perspective this project and what it means, is that we think it's the kind of project that's scalable over time while maintaining a long mine life. And we feel that's important because those are the projects that are going to ultimately be a major part, a contributor to the electric vehicle revolution. And so a project that has the ability to maintain pace with 5% of the total lithium supply in the world is a project that Peru should be really proud of. Thank you.